ancient technologies. So, one I've always believed that especially ancient Egyptians, definitely had technology. They definitely had, electricity. But we'll get to that eventually. Right now, I want to talk about capacitors and batteries. Right, a way of storing power, but also a way of creating it. As you can see in this video here, discussions on conductive properties of granite and their role in ancient technologies. In the video, the guy explains when granite is wet, it does conduct electricity. There's reasons for that, but the most important part is that granite can produce electricity, especially because it's piezoelectric. So definitely want to take advantage of that, right? So the next step would be, so I was like, okay, capacitors. What proof do I have that they had capacitors in the past? Well, there's some hieroglyphs that look like, especially when I'm looking at it, because there's two in particular that I stare at, and it's like based off of the fact that the images are inverted, right? As in the colors are different from one version of the image to the other one. There's a reason for it. So it looks like on the one on the left that it's full, that the capacitor is full, and on the right it's empty, like it's going out, and it's going out through that metal rod with that little spike ball on the top, right? So then that looks like, especially if you know what a Leyden jar is, it looks a lot like Leyden jar, like an ancient Leyden jar. So there's some hieroglyphs that when you look at it at the most basic level of drawing, if I was to draw a Leyden jar, that's what it looked like. It'll look like a container, right, with some type of stopper on the top, preferably wood, right? Something that's non-conductive, and then you have the metal object going through it, and then there'll be some form of liquid or some other factors, right, involved in it. So this really looks like a Leyden jar. To me, I just immediately thought capacitor, Leyden jar, capacitor, same thing, right? Now, originally, the one all the way at the image all the way at the bottom right, to me, it just looks kind of like a churn butter. Have you ever seen one of those little cylinders with a little handle, like a rod, and the idea is you pull it up, pull it down, pull it up, and you churn butter. So it looked like something to churn butter. It's like, oh, maybe they churn butter, or they use it to mix other things, whatever they need this for. Assuming it's some type of agriculture thing, and it still technically could be, right? And that depiction could specifically be for that. But then I saw the other hieroglyphs, the ones with color, and the fact that the different colors in the designs. And if you look really close at the two hieroglyphs, you see there's three other hieroglyphs with it, and they have the same. As you can see, they have the same color scheme and whatnot. So you got this little zigzag that, to me, that's a frequency signal. That's a symbol for frequency, sound wave, right? Sound waves. So that's a wavy pattern. And then you got this upside down bowl, because it has all these little stripes, some type of upside down bowl. We'll figure out what that is in the future, right? And then we have this other thing that seems kind of like some type of wheel or arc reactor, whatever. The point is, both images have a lot of the same symbols. The only difference is what looks like a capacitor or a churn butter, cylinder, whatever device. The colors are different. Like, they're inverted. The colors are swapped out. So it looks like on the left that it's full, and on the right it's a depiction of it empty. Like it's expelling, it's releasing what's in it. And then it's just a matter of recharging it. Right? And the fact that right next to it there's the wave that looks like sine wave is what's called a sine wave in electronics. It looks like a sine wave, frequency wave, right? And the other items around it does kind of look like they could be electrical components. So this one whole entire little section, where there's these little hieroglyphs next to each other, looks electrical, looks technological based. There could be some electromagnet aspect going on here in that depiction that many people haven't noticed, but I'm noticing. So this could be a possibility that that's what this is referring to the Leyden jar concept or a capacitor. So ancient humans, they also have, we found a while back, the Baghdad battery, and I found a depiction of the Baghdad battery on a obelisk. Now, to connect these two things, I wanted to point out that the first off is the belief that the Great Pyramid of Giza is a power plant, electrical, electric generating power plant, like it produces electricity, right? So it produces electricity, and it pulses it out, right? It transmits out the electrical energy through the air, right? So it could ionize air, plus it have certain factors of ionization or whatever. Not going to get into those details. The point is, it essentially produces electricity because there's quartz in there, right? And then there's water involved, and it produces pressure, which squeezes the electricity out of the quartz, which, squeezing electricity out of anything, like a magnet, for example, it's going to give you what? Electricity, right? So it produces electricity, and it has to go somewhere. And I believe it goes to obelisks. Obelisks are designed, their purpose is to receive, they're like antennas, right? You could say Wi-Fi antenna if you want to call it that. They're antennas, and their job, just like any antenna, is to receive frequencies, right? To receive radio waves, stuff like that. So they receive this energy, as it were, right? And then it transfers. They act kind of like what's it called? Lightning hits it. A lightning rod. It acts like a lightning rod, and it'll bring the electricity from the air, right? Because the electricity is flowing in the air right now, and it'll, redirect it down to the ground. And there's partly because there's more likely these obelisks are made of granite, and so they will kind of attract and absorb the electricity, and it'll come down. And since it's coming down, and the obelisk itself is essentially being electrified, when we're surprised that what you do is you come to the obelisk, right, and then you take one of these Baghdad batteries, or that other thing I'm gonna call it Egyptian capacitor, because I don't know what's the name for that hieroglyph, but it would be like Egyptian capacitor, right? And then take it to the obelisk, put the metal part of it, right, and put it towards the obelisk, and it should charge, right? And as you can see here's an obelisk. Don't know where it's located, but here's an obelisk that has a person with what looks like in his hand a Baghdad battery. It looks like a jar, right? More likely a granite jar, possibly, or if it's literally the Baghdad battery. I think the Baghdad battery is made of clay or something. Let's see if it vase for support. It just says vase. It doesn't specify what it's made of, but it's probably some form of clay or something, or it could be granite. Typically granite is a good material. Point is, and it looks like there's something sticking out of it, like something metal. And as you can see, he's presenting it to something at an angle, like, hey, here. And it's on an obelisk. So if you were to hold it in your hands, you would point it, the metal part, towards the obelisk, and then just let it charge. How long is hard to tell, because I don't know if there's a indicator, if there's a way to tell if it's fully charged. Maybe the weight of it maybe gets a little heavy. It's like, okay, fully charged because it feels heavy. I don't know. Right? These are theories, right? Assumptions um, of what. But it's the fact that I'm seeing things that's like, oh, this is giving it a big impression. Like, that looks like a Baghdad battery. It's on an obelisk. I believe the obelisk basically is a charging station. So that's where you go to charge your Baghdad battery. It's with the obelisk. And the Baghdad battery or any of these other things, I call it, this thing that I call the Egyptian capacitor or Leyden jar. It's Egyptian Leyden jar, right? Is what you charge. Now here is an image of a series of Leyden jars. So Leyden jars put together, connected in series, which makes it more powerful and it could store more power, right? And these are big, so they're super Leydens or super capacitors. So here are some depictions of some stuff that I'm like, these look like jars that are connected, right, in parallel, right? The colors of the tops on the image on the right is blue, and the containers is red. Red, that could mean clay, right? Like clay jars, and the blue can represent metal, like copper or something like that, or for the Leyden jar, it would be brass, because brass does kind of turn like kind of bluish, greenish after a while. It doesn't always stay, copper looking. Anyway, point is these are in series, they're on top, and they have what looks like handles for you to hold them. And they look like capacitors. There's one image where it's like there's 3 capacitors in series, and there's another image with 4 capacitors in series. So clearly these represent something different. These are not something that's by standard is just three, right? 3 things. So like this gives the impression that this one only produces this much power and the other one's this much power, because the more jars, right, or containers in the little series, the more you have in the series, the more powerful it is. More jars, more power, right? So it's just an interesting idea. The fact that there's actually hieroglyphs that kind of display that. That's the thing I'm mainly doing, is looking for hieroglyphs that prove or at least depict some form of technology, something where I can be like, okay, this looks like. Because think about it, why would you have multiple jars connected together for? It does have handles, so it does look like you could pour it out, right? Maybe you're trying to pour 3 drinks at the same time, 4 drinks at the same time. That could be a possibility, right? That could literally be all that this is just that. Just some. That's the technology that I'm actually seeing, is just some way of pouring multiple drinks at the same time. So that way you're not pouring 1 drink at a time. You can pour multiples at the same time, so you can be quick. And this could be used for not just like drinks to drink, but could be like for chemical purposes, like you're doing some chemical stuff. This could be used for science, is what I'm saying. Like you might need to mix, or each and every one of those containers could have different chemicals, and the idea is you're gonna mix them together at the same time, and get a chemical reaction. So that could be another possibility. However, where it works. Something I was thinking about was how this could work would be is that there's like a chemical, like 2 things like vinegar and something else mixed that will create some like gas, like some gas build up in the containers, and the containers themselves are granite, and that will cause pressure onto the granite, which will release the electricity, right? Because it's piezoelectric, and the electricity will flow through the liquid, and it'll come in contact with something metal, like copper, for example, and it'll travel through the copper and go wherever the copper is going, right? And that's a way you could essentially create I guess I'll call it a chemical battery. out of a graphite jar. So it'd be a lot like the Leyden jar concept, right? It'd be a lot like the Leyden jar concept, but it would actually, but the jar itself, under pressure will create the electricity, and then with the liquid, it's creating the pressure. That's how you transfer the electrical output, the electrical sparks, right, into the direction you want, which is going to be through a metal piece that's going to connect to something else. And that's a way you can essentially create a battery. I mean, most batteries are chemical batteries, essentially, right? So definitely something I want to experiment with. I would like to be able to create some type of, like, maybe just buy a granite jar or something, and then try it out myself with like some baking soda and vinegar, right? And see what happens. See if it works out the way I think it does. Right? I mean, theoretically, it should work. The whole idea of creating pressure with the baking soda and vinegar combination within the jar against the walls of the granite jar, and then through the vinegar and baking soda mixture, which is liquid, the electricity should flow towards the metal rod that'll be in there, and should get some electrical release, some couple sparks, right? So that'd be pretty cool to put that together. I did order a granite rock, but didn't order a granite jar. I guess I gotta go look on Amazon and see if I can find one. But I just bought a granite rock because I want to practice cutting and drilling granite, So that's for a different project, different video. Cutting and drilling and carving granite. And I think I'll leave it there. I gave you enough ideas, enough to think about when it comes to the possibility that they had Leyden jars, capacitors, whatever you want to call them. They had access to electricity, batteries. So capacitors and batteries, ancient Egyptians, and just humans in general, because I don't think they're the only ones who had this type of stuff. They're just the only ones that have pictures that highly hint at the fact that they had these things. That's the end of the video.